Hey everybody, Jim Creel from Wild Horses here with you today. We're going to discuss today the differences in the early 66-67 door and then the later 68 to 77 doors. We're going to be using Sean's 67 Bronco Sport, and we're going to be using Wild Horse's 77 Bronco for our reference points. Now, we're not going to get into every single little subtle difference, but we're going to give you the basics and the big picture overview so that you can go back to your hobcobbled Bronco and possibly tell what the heck do I have going on here on this truck. So let's dive right in. So to start with today, I want to show you a few subtle differences between the 66 and the 67 Bronco door. Now this is a 1967 Bronco Sport, and that's important. A 66 Bronco, we're going to focus in on this keyhole here. 66 Broncos have the keyhole right there just above the body line. Now what happened in 67, they moved them right here below the outer door handle. The reason, at least I suspect the reason, is they introduced the Bronco Sport. And the Bronco Sport have this belt line molding or trim. So that keyhole right there interfered with this Sport package, and Ford decided to move the keyhole right there. That's a subtle little difference between the 66 and the 67 door. Now this 67 also has little few oddities like the more narrow mirror. If you come in here, the 67 Sport had a specific armrest. It's more square, whereas the 66s and the non-Sport is more of a triangular armrest. That's a real subtle difference. Okay, moving to the inside of the Bronco. Something to note is the 66 window crank and door handle. The screw holes come in from the sides of the handles into the regulator and to the mechanism. On the 67, the screws go right through the center of the window crank and the door handle. A subtle little difference, but worth noting. Now, all the aftermarket window regulators have the screw hole, and you can use either version of this to fit it up. So with the subtle differences between 66 and 67 out of the way, let's move on to the big picture, which is early doors versus late doors. Now 68 doors are kind of in a category by themselves. We're going to talk about the door window frames for a second. In 66 to 68, the door window frames were bolted in from the factory. So on the back of the 67 door, they're bolted in with 3 bolts there, 2 bolts up at the front, whereas the later doors, 69 to 77, are welded into the door shell. They're welded at the back and they're welded at the front, no bolt holes. Now this is a weak spot, and a lot of times these break here, and the way to repair them typically is to weld them back into the door shell. Okay, the reason the 68 is all by itself is because 68 has the removable frame, but it has the later style armrest, paddle handle, and the other stuff that we're going to get into now. Now I'm going to get into what makes these seemingly the same looking doors not interchangeable. And it boils down to the striker post, which is part of the body, and the latch mechanisms. Those are all different between the early and the late. And I like to think of it in simple terms. The early style striker post is round, and the corresponding latch is a round latch. The later model is an oval-shaped striker, and it's got a corresponding oval-shaped latch to go with it. But the position of the strikers on the doorpost are also slightly different, and I want to show you just so you can see and help you to identify if you're not sure what you really have or what you're working on. if you measure from the flat spot on the rocker panel to the center of the post, you get roughly 12 1/4 on the early. Now let's do the same thing on the late model. You're gonna notice it's about an inch lower, or 11 1/4 to the center. Some other things to note is the posts themselves, the little positioning bumps, are actually different between the years. And that's just the shape of these and where they're at. Holy moly. Would you believe I just discovered the strangest thing on this balloon chaser Bronco? I just discovered a round latch on my doorpost. This is so weird to be doing this video and to come up with something so random, because I'm actually looking at this. This is sort of a square lower bump here and the position of it. Now, oddly enough, I've got the correct door and the correct latch in this door, but let's go to the other side. Let's go to the driver's side of this balloon chaser. This isn't planned. This can only happen when we do this kind of video, like to come up with weird stuff like this. This is so strange, so strange. If you look at the driver's side of my balloon chaser Bronco, that's oval, and that's got a normal doorpost. We're gonna have to go back in the history of this Bronco to see where in the world this got changed. I'm like dumbfounded. I don't know where to go in the video at this point. Let me tell you, I gotta take a break. So it's just so weird. It's really kind of the whole point of this video is to know what you have. I wanna know when this early doorpost got on this 77 Bronco. Andrew, if you're watching, do you have any clues about that? So random. But let's get into the other parts that make the early door and the later door different. So what else makes the early door different than the late model door? The wing window assemblies are interchangeable, but the little lock handles are different on the 66, 67 versus the 68 to 77. This handle, when it's closed, points up, and it's got a little tab here to lock it into place. On your later door, the handle doesn't have the little tab on it, and the handle just comes over there and locks in place. And then on this door, the quarter nickel method of holding the wing window shut so you don't get a lot of air. That's a little trick. Anyway, interchangeable, but those are different. And if you're getting picky about originality, you want to make sure you know which version you need and which version you have. All of the aftermarket wing window, vent window assemblies are based on the late style, and they will bolt into the 66, 67 door. So now we move to the inside of the door. The window cranks, the door handles, the armrest, the door panels themselves, those are all different between the early and late style. The early is easily identified just by this handle, and if we go and look at the late's identified with this bigger armrest and the paddle handle instead of just a handle type of handle, but that's a paddle handle, very common Ford door opening mechanism. Okay, so that's a wrap to our classic Bronco early versus late door discussion. If you have some observations that you've made, leave them in the comments. If you have a question and you want to leave that in the comments, we'll do our best to answer it for you. Or you can even call us here at Wild Horses at 209-400-7200. With all that being said, we hope to see you out there on the trail. Peace.